The first time Seraphine Vale heard the Alpha King scream, the whole palace pretended it was thunder. The storm had come down from the northern mountains before midnight, folding itself around the palace towers like a living thing. Snow lashed against the glass roofs. The iron gates groaned. Somewhere beyond the walls, the wolves of the royal guard howled at the sky, not in challenge, but in fear. Inside the glass garden, Seraphine sat between rows of white moonflowers and sleeping soldiers, holding a silver singing bowl in her lap. The men around her were warriors of the Northern Crown, wolves who had survived border wars, ambushes, poisoned arrows, and winter famine. Yet it was not battle that haunted them most. It was the silence after battle. It was waking with their claws out, tasting blood in dreams. It was hearing a friend's last breath in every gust of wind. Seraphine had spent the evening guiding them back into their bodies with low sound, warm herbs, and rhythm. No bright magic, no violent spellwork, no command, just breath, just patience, just the old understanding that a wounded wolf did not need to be conquered before it could be healed. Then the North Tower shook. A crack of blue-white lightning split the night, not from the sky, but from inside the palace. Every moonflower in the garden bent toward the tower. The sleeping soldiers woke with gasps, their eyes flashing gold. One of them fell from his cot and pressed his hands over his ears. Another whispered, "The king." The palace healers outside the garden doors began shouting orders. Boots thundered across the marble corridors. Iron chains rattled somewhere high above. Seraphine stood so quickly the singing bowl slid from her lap and rang once against the stone floor. A soft, trembling note that disappeared beneath another terrible sound. This time, no one could call it thunder. It was pain. Deep, raw, and almost inhuman, but not monstrous. Not to Seraphine. Monsters roared because they wanted the world to fear them. This sound was different. It was the sound of a man using every piece of strength he had left to keep something inside him from breaking loose. "Stay here," she told the nearest soldier softly. He looked at her as if she had lost her mind. "Lady Vale, no one goes near the North Tower after moonrise. I know. He kills anything that touches him when the storm takes him." Seraphine reached for her wool shawl, wrapped it around her shoulders, and took the small lantern from the garden table. "Then I will not touch him." The soldier tried to stand, but his injured leg failed him. High Healer Penniless ordered the tower sealed. Seraphine looked toward the corridor where the royal healers were already gathering with silver needles, smoke vessels, and bowls of black sedative draught. She had seen those treatments before. They did not heal pain. They forced it deeper. Another scream tore through the palace. This one ended in a broken breath. Seraphine walked out of the glass garden. The closer she came to the North Tower, the colder the air became. The corridor torches burned blue. Frost crept across the walls in branching veins. At the foot of the tower stairs, 6 guards stood with spears crossed before the door. Beyond them, High Healer Penniless Thorn stood in his long gray robes, his white hair tied at the nape of his neck, his face calm, in the way only cruelly disciplined men could look calm during another person's agony. "Lady Vale," he said without turning, "return to your patients. He cannot breathe. He is not your patient. He is suffering." "He is the Alpha King," Penniless replied. "There is a difference." The tower shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Behind the sealed door, something heavy struck stone, followed by the violent snap of chains pulled tight. Seraphine stepped forward. The guards lowered their spears. Penniless finally turned his head. His eyes were pale, sharp, and cold with warning. "The king gave an order. No one enters. I am not asking to enter." "Then, what are you doing?" Seraphine looked past him to the black wood door. The storm behind it pulsed like a second heart. "Listening." A flicker of annoyance passed over Penniless's face. "Your border methods may soothe common soldiers, but what lives in that room is beyond song. Then my song will fail quietly. You will interfere with royal treatment." "No," Seraphine said, still calm. "I will sit outside a door." Penniless stared at her for a long moment. Perhaps he expected defiance to look louder. Perhaps he was irritated that hers did not. At last, he gestured sharply to the guards. "Let her make a fool of herself. If she dies from the backlash, it will be by her own choice." Seraphine lowered herself to the cold floor before the tower door. The wood trembled beneath the force of the storm inside. She could smell burned air, iron, snow, and blood. She placed her lantern at her side, pressed one palm against the door, and closed her eyes. Inside, Alpha King Ronan Ashvale was chained to his own throne. She had seen him only from a distance before, a dark figure in council, broad, shouldered, and severe, with black hair like a winter raven's wing and eyes that could silence a room before he spoke. The Northern Kingdom obeyed him because he was powerful. It feared him because he never allowed anyone to see where that power ended and pain began. But beyond the door, he was not a legend. He was a man kneeling in ruin, choking on a storm that had mistaken his body for a battlefield. Seraphine inhaled slowly. When she sang, she did not sing loudly. The melody slipped beneath the crackle of lightning, soft as snow falling over graves. It was an old tune from her mother's valley, one Seraphine had never fully understood. Her mother used to hum it during winter storms, saying only, "Some storms are not angry, some are lost." At first, nothing changed. The guards shifted impatiently. Penniless's mouth curved as though he had expected exactly this. Then, the lightning behind the door stuttered. Once, twice. The next breath from inside the chamber came ragged, but deeper. Seraphine kept singing. She let the melody carry a pattern inside it. Inhale, hold, release. Inhale, hold, release. Not command. Invitation, not control. Return. Inside the tower, chains scraped against stone. The king made a sound that might have been a growl, might have been grief. The storm surged toward the door so fiercely, the guards stumbled back. Frost shattered across the walls. Seraphine's palm burned cold against the wood, but she did not remove it. "Leave," a voice rasped from inside. It was low, torn, and dangerous. "I can't control it." Seraphine opened her eyes. The palace around her had gone silent. She answered through the door, still barely above a whisper. "Then, do not control it yet. Just breathe with me." Another pulse of lightning. Another gasp. "I could kill you. You have not opened the door." Silence. Then the smallest sound. A breath dragging through pain, following hers by half a second. Seraphine sang until her throat ached. She sang until the soldiers stopped trembling. She sang until the frost melted from the door in silver threads. And at last, deep inside the tower, the storm folded inward like a wounded wolf curling around itself. For the first time in 7 years, Alpha King Ronan Ashvale slept. When the door opened at dawn, the chamber beyond looked like a battlefield. The windows had cracked. The marble floor was burned in branching scars. The iron throne stood in the center of the room, its chains melted in places where lightning had kissed them. Ronan sat slumped against the black stone steps below it, one wrist still locked in a silver restraint, his dark hair falling across his face, his breathing slow and even. Seraphine stood in the doorway, her voice nearly gone. Ronan's eyes opened. They were not storm-bright now. They were gray, exhausted, and startlingly human. He looked at her for a long time, as if he did not recognize the idea of waking without agony. Then his gaze dropped to her hand, still reddened from where she had touched the frozen door. "Who taught you that song?" he asked. Seraphine's fingers tightened around her shawl. "My mother." Something moved across his face. Fear, perhaps, or recognition. But before he could speak again, Penniless stepped into the chamber and announced, "A fortunate coincidence." The storm had already spent itself. Ronan did not look away from Seraphine. "No," he said, voice rough from the night. It hurt her. By midday, the entire palace had heard the rumor. The Alpha King had slept, not collapsed under sedatives, not been forced unconscious with silver. Slept. 3 full hours after years of broken nights. The council chamber filled before the second bell. Generals in black wolf-hide cloaks stood beside noble lords with jeweled collars. The royal healers gathered in gray robes near Penniless, their faces carefully blank. Seraphine stood alone before the moonstone table, in a simple blue gown still smelling faintly of herbs and winter smoke. Ronan sat at the head of the chamber, gloved hands resting on the carved arms of his chair. No crown sat on his head. He rarely wore it. He did not need gold to remind anyone he ruled. "Explain what you did," he said. The room waited for her to tremble. Seraphine did not. "I used breathwork, woven into sound," she said. "The melody slows the body's panic response. For wolves, rhythm can help call instinct back from fear, before fear becomes violence," one of the older healers scoffed. "A song cannot treat a royal curse." "I did not say I treated the curse." Penniless's eyes sharpened. Seraphine continued. "I helped His Majesty breathe." A murmur moved around the chamber. It was such a small answer that it sounded almost foolish beside words like curse, throne, alpha, bloodline. Yet Ronan's gaze did not leave her. Penniless stepped forward. "Your Majesty, Lady Vale's border practices may comfort soldiers, but your condition is not a soldier's nightmare. The Stormwolf curse is ancient, volatile, and bound to your royal blood. Emotional interference could produce dependency. Worse, it could allow outside influence over your wolf." Seraphine turned to him. "Then, His Majesty should decide while fully conscious whether he wants me near him again." The murmurs stopped. Ronan's expression changed by almost nothing. But in that almost nothing, Seraphine sensed surprise. Perhaps he was used to people fighting for access to his power. Perhaps he was not used to someone offering him the right to refuse care. "And your terms?" he asked. The court went still. Seraphine folded her hands in front of her. "I will not enter locked rooms. I will not work while restrained by anyone. I will not use my voice if your Majesty orders me to stop. I will not be touched without consent. And if I feel your court intends to turn my healing into a weapon, I will leave." A nobleman gave a quiet laugh of disbelief. "She gives terms to a king." Ronan's eyes cut toward him. The laugh died immediately. Then the Alpha King looked back at Seraphine. "Accepted." Penniless's jaw tightened. "Your Majesty, Lady Vale will treat me in the glass garden beginning tonight," Ronan said. "She will have freedom of movement, access to the healing archives, and the authority to end any session at her discretion." The chamber erupted into shocked whispers. Ronan stood. The room fell silent again. "She is not my prisoner," he said. "She is not your experiment. Remember both." That night, Seraphine arrived in the glass garden with a small tray of moonflower tea, warmed river stones, and a silver bowl. Snow moved over the glass ceiling like pale smoke. The room smelled of damp earth and winter blossoms. Ronan was already there. He stood near the farthest wall, dressed entirely in black, his hands covered in dark leather gloves. Even in a garden, he looked like a man built for war. The lamplight traced the hard line of his jaw, the shadows beneath his eyes, the faint branching scars at his throat where lightning had once burned through skin. "You chose a fragile room," he said. "I chose a living one. If the storm rises, the glass will break. Then we will sit away from the glass." He studied her. "You speak as if the storm is a difficult guest. Is it not?" For the first time, something almost like humor touched his mouth. It was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. They began at opposite ends of a long stone bench. Seraphine did not sing at first. She taught him the breathing pattern without melody. Ronan approached it like a battlefield exercise, precise and controlled. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 2. Release for 6. His shoulders remained rigid. His eyes stayed open. "You may close your eyes," she said. "No. Because you do not trust me? Because if I lose control, I need to see where you are." The answer was so bluntly protective that Seraphine forgot her next instruction. Ronan noticed. "Does that frighten you?" "Yes." His face closed. "But not enough to leave," she added. The storm under his skin flickered once, faint as heat lightning beneath clouds. Night after night, he returned. At first, he spoke only when necessary. He told her when the pain sharpened, when his vision blurred, when the wolf pressed too close to the surface. Seraphine learned to read what he did not say, the way his fingers curled before lightning rose, the way thunder made his breath shorten, the way he turned his face from the moon when grief was worse than pain. She changed the songs accordingly. For rage, she sang low. For panic, she sang slow. For grief, she did not sing at all at first. She only breathed until he could follow. One night, when thunder rolled across the mountains, Ronan flinched. It was small, almost invisible. But Seraphine saw it. She lowered the silver bowl before striking it, and instead drew a softer note from a stringed instrument resting beside her. The sound was warmer, less like metal, more like a voice under snow. Ronan's gaze lifted. "You changed it," he said. "You dislike thunder. I carry thunder in my blood. That does not mean you must like hearing it." He looked away. The session ended early that night. He left without another word. But the next evening there was a covered basket waiting beside Seraphine's usual seat, honey cakes from the royal kitchen, and a small stone wrapped in cloth, still warm from the hearth. "For your hands," Ronan said when he entered and saw her looking at it. "They shake when you sing too long." Seraphine touched the warm stone. "You noticed?" "I notice many things." There was no softness in his tone, yet the words settled in her chest like a secret flame. The court noticed too. Whispers began in the corridors. Some called her the king's songbird. Some wondered whether she had bewitched him. Others warned that no woman could stand so near a cursed alpha without paying a price. Penniless did not repeat the rumors himself. He was too clever for that. He merely asked questions in the hearing of the right people. Was it healthy for a king to depend on one healer? Could melody influence wolf instinct? Was consent meaningful if the curse itself responded to her? Seraphine heard enough to understand the shape of the trap. Ronan heard more. One afternoon, he dismissed a guard for mocking her methods outside the infirmary. By dusk, the guard's entire family had apologized. Seraphine went to Ronan before the night session began. "You cannot terrify the court into respecting me," she said. "I can terrify them into silence. That is not the same thing. It is often more efficient." She almost smiled. "Your Majesty." "Ronan," he said. The name fell between them like something breakable. Seraphine looked up. His face remained controlled, but his eyes had changed. "During treatment," he added. "Titles make the wolf restless." That was a lie, or only half true. She accepted it anyway. "Ronan," she said softly. The storm beneath his skin went quiet before she sang a single note. Weeks passed. Ronan began sleeping 2 hours at a time, then 3. The silver restraints were removed from the garden sessions. He still wore gloves. He still sat with distance between them, but the distance had become ritual rather than rejection. Sometimes, after midnight, he spoke. He told her that the curse began after the Battle of Black Fen, where he had won the north by calling lightning against an invading army. He told her that victory tasted like ash, because the storm did not leave when the battle ended. It stayed in his bones. It woke with his grief. It fed on his anger. It answered loneliness, most of all. He told her about Lady Elowen, the noblewoman once promised to him, how she had come to his chamber during his first true storm surge, how she had touched his face and died before morning. "I was told my lightning stopped her heart," he said. Seraphine sat across from him in the dim garden, the moonflowers glowing at their feet. "You do not sound certain." His jaw tightened. "I remember blood. I remember Penniless pulling me away. I remember her hand going cold." "What do you remember before that?" His eyes flashed. "Enough." The storm rose sharply. Seraphine did not push. "Then we stopped there. I am not fragile." "No," she said. "But wounds do not become less real because the body carrying them is strong." He stared at her. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not as a subject to a king, not as prey to a predator, not even as a healer to a patient. She spoke as if his pain had shape, weight, dignity, as if it did not need to justify itself before being tended. That night, Seraphine's voice failed halfway through the second song. The sound cracked. She winced and lowered her hand to her throat. Ronan's eyes opened instantly. "What is wrong?" "Nothing. I used too much voice today with the soldiers. I can continue." "No, it is only strain." He reached for the blanket folded at the end of the bench and draped it over her shoulders with careful distance, never letting his fingers brush her neck. "Tonight you rest," he said. "I will fight the storm quietly." Seraphine should have argued. Instead, she looked at the man who had been chained to stone rather than risk hurting his people. The king, who had ordered her freedom before accepting her help. The feared alpha now sitting awake in pain so she could close her eyes. "You should not have to fight it alone," she whispered. His face hardened at once, not in anger, but fear. Yes, he said. I should. The first truth came from the archives. Seraphine had requested access to old curse records as part of Ronan's treatment. Penniless granted permission with a smile, too polished to trust, then assigned a junior healer to watch her. Seraphine let herself appear absorbed in common texts, while her fingers searched the shelves for missing dust patterns, broken seals, rewritten labels. She found Lady Elowen's record hidden under battlefield casualty reports. 3 pages had been removed. The remaining sheet listed the official cause of death as stormfire trauma, but beneath it, almost erased by chemical wash, was a second notation: cardiac failure, following draft administration. Seraphine's blood went cold. That night, Ronan arrived late, his movements stiff. When he removed his cloak, she saw the marks at the back of his neck, tiny silver punctures along his spine. What happened? Treatment. From Penniless? It grounds the lightning. Seraphine crossed the room before she remembered caution. Ronan went still as she approached. May I look? He hesitated. Permission cost him something. Then he turned. The skin around the punctures was burned pale. Not healed. Suppressed. This does not ground lightning, she said, her voice quiet with anger. It traps it. Ronan turned back. You are certain? I have treated enough wounded wolves to know the difference between release and containment. This forces the storm inward, until it erupts harder. His expression did not change, but his eyes darkened. Penniless has used this method for years. I know. The implication entered the space between them. Ronan stepped away. Careful. Do not ask me to be careful with the truth. The storm flared. A thin crack shot across the nearest glass panel. You think I want this? He demanded. No. I think you were taught that enduring pain is the same as protecting others. His breathing sharpened. Seraphine knew she should lower her voice. Instead, she said the thing no one else had dared. What if your suffering has not been saving them? What if it has only been keeping you obedient? Lightning struck the stone floor between them. The garden filled with blue light. Ronan's eyes turned silver, his fingers curling into claws. For one heartbeat, Seraphine saw the wolf inside him pressing against his skin, enormous, furious, wounded. Fear opened cold in her stomach. Ronan saw it and recoiled, as if struck. Leave, he said. Seraphine's hands trembled, but she did not move toward the door. She inhaled. 4 counts. Held. Tfal. Released. Seeks. Ronan shook his head. Do not. She breathed again. The storm struck the walls. Moonflowers tore from their stems. Seraphine kept breathing. Not singing, not commanding, simply refusing to let his fear decide the end of the night. At last, Ronan matched her breath. Once. Then again. His claws retracted. The lightning sank beneath his skin. He turned away, one hand pressed over his eyes. I frightened you, he said. Yes. His shoulders bowed under the word. Seraphine stepped closer, stopping just beyond reach. And then you stopped. He gave a bitter laugh without humor. Is that meant to comfort me? It is meant to remind you there is a difference. Between monster and man, between instinct and choice, between fear and truth. He said nothing. But when Seraphine fell asleep later in the chair from exhaustion, she woke near dawn beneath Ronan's cloak. He stood several feet away, facing the cracked glass wall, keeping watch over her like a guard who did not know how to be gentle except by standing between her and the world. From the shadows beyond the garden doors, Penniless Thorn watched them both. He saw the cloak. He saw the king without gloves, one hand uncovered at his side, and he understood that Seraphine Vale was no longer treating the curse. She was reaching the man inside it. The next morning, Penniless summoned Seraphine before the Royal Healing Council. He did not accuse her loudly. That would have been too crude. He praised her dedication. He admired her unusual success. Then he asked her to demonstrate soul resonance on a wounded soldier in front of 7 senior healers and 3 council witnesses. Seraphine understood the danger immediately. If she refused, she looked secretive. If she succeeded, he would call it influence. The soldier was a young border wolf named Care, barely 20, his left hand shaking uncontrollably since battle. Seraphine sat before him and asked consent at every step. She used a low hum, guided his breathing, and placed a moonflower sachet near his wrist. Slowly, the tremor stopped. The room should have been relieved. Penniless folded his hands. Remarkable. You altered a wolf's instinctive response through sound alone. I helped his body leave fear, without potion, seal, or official spell structure. Yes, and if such a method were turned toward loyalty, obedience, desire, Seraphine met his eyes. Then it would no longer be healing. But it could be done? Before she could answer, the chamber doors opened. Ronan entered. The room dropped to its knees. Seraphine remained, seated beside the soldier, one hand still near his trembling wrist. Ronan noticed. A flicker of approval passed through his eyes, before his expression turned to ice. "This review is over," he said. Penniless bowed. "Your Majesty, the safety of the crown requires. The crown is safe. With respect, no one man can judge that while under treatment by the very woman in question." A deadly silence settled. Ronan's lightning stirred. Seraphine stood. "He is right about one thing." Every gaze turned to her. Ronan's face sharpened in warning. Seraphine continued. "Your Majesty should not be asked to defend me in a room designed to make his defense look like proof against me." Penniless's eyes narrowed. He had not expected her to see the shape of the snare so clearly. That night, Seraphine returned to the archive alone. The old archivist, Mistress Vey, found her standing beneath a shelf of banned histories. "You will not find them under Storm Wolf," the old woman said. Seraphine turned. Mistress Vey's face was lined like folded parchment. Her hands shook as she removed a false panel behind a row of prayer books. Inside lay a bundle of cracked vellum tied with white thread. "What are they?" Seraphine whispered. "Songs the court buried." The first page showed women in pale robes standing before storm-crowned kings, not kneeling, not chained. One hand over their hearts, one hand extended. The title had been half burned away. "The Brides of Breath and Storm." Seraphine touched the page. Her pulse answered it. "My mother sang one of these." Mistress Vey closed her eyes as if the words hurt. "Then your mother was wiser than she was safe." Beneath the lyrics was an inscription. "When the storm forgets it was born to protect, the bride of breath shall teach it to return." Seraphine's throat tightened. Bride did not mean wife. Not originally. It meant bondkeeper, witness. The one who stood close enough to speak, when everyone else feared the king too much to tell the truth. She carried the vellum to the hidden chapel beneath the glass garden, following old symbols carved into the stone. Ronan found her there, before dawn. "How did you know where I was?" she asked. "The storm quieted when you went below." They stood together before a mural hidden beneath ivy and frost. Women in white, kings made of lightning, wolves bowing not in submission, but relief. Ronan read the inscription beneath the mural. Then his face changed. Seraphine followed his gaze to the final line. "If the king refuses truth, the bride will carry the storm in his place." "No," Ronan said. "It may not mean death. It means cost. All healing has cost, not yours." His voice turned hard. "Not for me, Ronan. No." He stepped back from her, and the distance felt colder than the chapel stones. "If saving me means losing you, then from this night forward, you will never sing for me again." The command landed between them like a blade. Seraphine felt the wound of it before she understood it. He was trying to protect her. She knew that. She could see the fear behind his eyes, the terror that need had become attachment, and attachment had become danger. But protection without trust was only another kind of cage. "You do not get to make my courage illegal because you are afraid," she said. His jaw tightened. "I am your king, and I am not your chain." For a moment, something in him cracked. Then he turned away. By sunset, Seraphine was removed from his treatment schedule. By midnight, the North Tower screamed again. 3 nights passed. Ronan returned to Penniless's care and became exactly what the court wanted: controlled, silent, and visibly dying. His face grew hollow, his temper sharpened. He wore gloves even in council. The silver restraints returned beneath his sleeves. Seraphine continued treating soldiers, but every thunderclap from the tower cut through her like a call she had been ordered not to answer. On the 4th day, guards arrived at her chamber. They found forbidden song pages in her writing desk. Seraphine looked at the pages, then at Penniless, standing behind them. He did not bother to smile this time. The inquiry took place in the Great Hall. Nobles gathered eagerly, pretending concern while feeding on scandal. Penniless presented the pages as evidence that Seraphine had hidden Storm Bride materials and used banned resonance to bind the king's wolf. She was granted access. Mistress Vey protested weakly from the side. Penniless turned to her with gentle cruelty. Access to healing archives, not treason. Ronan sat on the throne above them, pale and rigid. Seraphine knew at once that he had not been told before the hearing began. His eyes found hers. The storm inside him flared with such force the torches leaned away. Penniless saw it too. Your Majesty, he said smoothly. For the safety of the kingdom, you must prove your will remains your own. Seraphine understood. If Ronan defended her, Penniless would say she controlled him. If he condemned her, he would break something between them, Penniless feared. Ronan's hand tightened on the throne. Seraphine lifted her chin. I have never forced His Majesty to do anything. I asked permission, every time. Penniless's voice softened, almost kindly. Then why does his breathing change when you enter a room? The court turned toward Ronan. He looked at Seraphine. In his eyes, she saw apology before he spoke. Lady Vale is dismissed from royal service, he said, each word carved from pain. She will be escorted beyond the inner gates before nightfall. The hall went silent. Seraphine did not move. For one heartbeat, Ronan looked less like a king than a man bleeding where no wound showed. Then she bowed, not low, not submissively, only enough to acknowledge the throne, not the decision. As your Majesty commands. She walked out without looking back. Only when the snow swallowed the palace behind her did she let herself stop. The northern wind tore at her cloak. The road to the border infirmary stretched pale beneath the moon. Behind her, the tower erupted. Lightning climbed into the sky, in a pillar so bright it turned night into bone-white day. Across the kingdom, wolves fell to their knees and howled. Seraphine closed her eyes. You foolish man, she whispered. Then she kept walking. The border infirmary had been her childhood home, though it had never belonged to her family. It sat between pine woods and frozen marsh, a place where wounded soldiers, lost children, and half-shifted wolves came when the palace did not know what to do with them. Seraphine's mother had died there, when Seraphine was 16, leaving behind dried herbs, half-finished songs, and a locked cedar chest Seraphine had never been able to open. The key was hidden inside the hem of the shawl her mother had given her. Seraphine found it on the second night after leaving the palace. Inside the chest were journals written in her mother's hand. Not recipes, not patient notes, confessions. Her mother, Leora Vale, had once served in the royal palace as a resonance healer. She had discovered that the Royal Healing Order had rewritten the Storm Bride rituals into methods of pain control. She had tried to warn Lady Elowen. Seraphine turned the page with shaking hands. Elowen did not die by Ronan's storm. She died by draft. Penniless had given her storm root to strengthen her heart before she entered Ronan's chamber. But storm root did not strengthen the heart. It drew lightning toward it. Elowen had not been killed because Ronan loved her. She had been murdered because she had learned enough to free him. The journal blurred in Seraphine's vision. For years, Ronan had worn guilt-like chains forged from his own hands, and the man who gave him those chains had stood beside him calling it treatment. At dawn, a border horn sounded. Seraphine ran outside. Smoke rose from the village below. Wolves in unfamiliar armor moved through the snow, attacking supply stores but avoiding full battle. It was not an invasion. It was theater. A staged crisis to prove the king unstable without his court-controlled healers. Seraphine grabbed her healing satchel and ran toward the wounded. By the time Ronan arrived, the village square was chaos. He rode at the head of the royal guard, black cloak snapping behind him, eyes already silver from lack of sleep. When an enemy wolf lunged toward a child, Ronan dismounted and struck the ground with one hand. Lightning split the snow, throwing the attacker back. The villagers cheered. Then the storm did not stop. It climbed up Ronan's arm, across his throat, into his eyes. The child began to cry. Ronan heard the cry and staggered backward, horror breaking through his battle fury. His wolf pressed close to the surface. Snow lifted around him. The guards shouted for chains. Seraphine stepped into the square. She was too far away for touch, too far for quiet breath. So she sang. The sound moved over the battlefield, thin at first, then steady. Wolves turned. Soldiers froze. Ronan's head snapped toward her. For one terrible second, Seraphine thought he might order her away again. Instead, he took one shaking breath, then another. The lightning sank. After the attackers fled, Ronan found her in the infirmary binding a soldier's wound. He stood in the doorway, filling it with shadow and cold. "You should not have come near me," he said. Seraphine did not look up. "You were standing near a child." His voice roughened. "I dismissed you." "Yes, I did it to keep you alive." She tied the bandage tighter than necessary. The soldier winced. She apologized and softened her hands. Then she faced Ronan. "You do not get to break trust and call it protection." Pain moved across his face, but he accepted the blow. "I know," he said. The honesty nearly undid her. She reached into her satchel and pulled out her mother's journal, along with Lady Elowin's copied record. "Read it." Ronan did. Seraphine watched the color leave his face. When he reached the final page, his hand began to shake. Not with lightning, with rage, with grief. "Elowin knew," he whispered. "She tried to help you." "I killed her." "No." The word cracked between them. Ronan looked up. Seraphine stepped closer, though fear still trembled in her ribs. "No, your fear did not kill her. Your love did not kill her. Someone used both against you." His breathing broke. For years, Seraphine realized, Ronan had feared the monster inside him. But what would happen when he finally saw the monster beside him? He closed the journal carefully. Penniless was in the room the night my curse began. They returned to the palace through the old chapel tunnels beneath the glass garden. Ronan did not bring her through the front gates. He said it was safer. Seraphine said nothing until they reached the hidden chapel, where the Storm Bride mural waited beneath its veil of frost. There, she stopped. "Do you understand why I hate this?" she asked. Ronan turned. "The tunnels? Being hidden." His expression tightened. "You think secrecy protects me," she said. "But every secret has fed this curse. Every hidden treatment, every sealed record, every truth buried, because someone powerful decided fear was easier than change. I brought you this way because Penniless would have arrested you at the gates. I know. And I came because I want the truth exposed, not because I enjoy being smuggled like contraband." Ronan bowed his head. For a king, the movement was almost shocking. "You are right." Seraphine had expected argument. His acceptance left her momentarily speechless. He continued, "When I dismissed you, I told myself I was choosing your life over your trust. But that was not my choice to make." "No," she said softly. "It wasn't. I am sorry." The words were quiet. No performance. No royal drama. Just a man standing in the ruins of the lie that had shaped him, offering the one thing his pride had never allowed. Seraphine felt some guarded part of herself loosen, not fully, but enough to breathe. "I believe you," she said. "But trust does not return because you ask for it." "I know. Then earn it differently." Ronan looked at her. "Tell me how." Together, they studied her mother's journal and the old chapel inscriptions. The original ritual had been twisted by the royal healers. It did not require Seraphine to carry the storm in Ronan's place. It required 3 public truths. The king must name the wound he buried. The healer must sing without being owned. The court must witness that the storm calms through trust, not domination. Ronan stared at the lines for a long time. "This cannot happen in private," Seraphine said. "No, you would have to speak before the council." "Yes, not as king." His jaw flexed. "As a man," she finished. The storm stirred beneath his skin, not violent now, but afraid. Ronan could face assassins, armies, wolves, and winter. But the thought of standing before his kingdom and saying he had been lonely seemed to wound him more deeply than silver. Seraphine saw it. She did not soften the truth. That is why the curse chose it. Before he could answer, bells began ringing above them. The winter moon ball, the greatest gathering of northern nobility, pack leaders, and allied houses. The night Penniless would have every witness he needed. "We reveal everything tonight," Seraphine said. Ronan's eyes darkened. "He will strike first. He already has." When Seraphine woke before dusk in the small chamber connected to the chapel, she knew something was wrong before she opened her eyes. Her throat felt wrapped in thorns. She tried to speak. No sound came. On her pillow lay a single black thread, stitched through the fabric in the shape of a closed mouth. A voice-stealing curse. Penniless had taken her song. Ronan found her in the glass garden, one hand at her throat, moonlight turning her face pale. When she tried to whisper his name and failed, the storm exploded through him so suddenly the glass ceiling cracked from end to end. "No," he snarled. The word was not anger at her. It was terror. Seraphine stepped toward him and shook her head. He was breathing too fast. Lightning climbed his neck. His wolf was rising, called by the sight of her hurt. She could not sing, so she lifted 2 fingers and pressed them to her pulse. Then she pointed to him. "Breathe." Ronan stared at her. The storm raged harder. Seraphine inhaled slowly, placing her hand over her heart. 4 counts. Hold. Release. She did it again. Again. Her eyes never left his. Ronan dropped to one knee, as if the breath itself hurt. But he followed. No song. No spell. Only the rhythm they had built through weeks of trust. The storm lowered. For the first time, Seraphine understood the truth fully. Her power had never been only her voice. The songs were doors, but she was the one who opened them. Her attention, her steadiness, her refusal to abandon the wounded thing beneath the crown. Ronan removed one glove. Seraphine froze. Bare skin was the danger he had avoided since the beginning. He held his hand near hers, palm up, not demanding, asking. She placed her hand in his. Lightning surged. For one breath, she expected pain. Instead, warmth spread through her palm. A mark appeared beneath her skin. Silver and blue, shaped like a storm spiral. Ronan inhaled sharply and pulled open his shirt at the collar. The same mark burned over his heart. They looked at each other in silence. The bond had not awakened because of beauty. Not because of a bite. Not because fate had struck them like lightning and erased choice. It had formed slowly, breath by breath, boundary by boundary, night by night. Each time one of them had chosen trust, when fear would have been easier. Ronan lifted her marked hand toward his mouth, then stopped before touching it. "Even now?" he asked. Seraphine nodded. His lips brushed her knuckles. So lightly it felt less like desire than reverence. Then, guards burst into the garden. By Penniless's order, Seraphine was arrested before sunset. They dragged her not to a cell, but to the royal ballroom. The winter moon ball glittered beneath chandeliers of ice crystal and silver flame. Nobles in white and black filled the hall. Pack leaders from distant territories stood beside ambassadors and royal commanders. Above them, the glass dome revealed a full moon blurred by storm clouds. Penniless stood at the center of the ballroom like a priest before sacrifice. "Behold," he announced, as Seraphine was brought forward, voiceless and bound. The forbidden bloodline returned. The storm bride, the singer of kings, the woman who would place the northern crown beneath her song. Whispers rippled through the court. Ronan stood near the throne dais, pale and still. Seraphine saw at once what Penniless had done. The ceremonial wine in Ronan's hand had been darkened with stormroot. The curse was already rising, fed by poison and public fear. Penniless turned to the court. "For generations, we have protected this kingdom from magic that disguises obedience as healing. Ask yourselves why the king breathes when she enters. Ask why his wolf answers her before his council. Ask what becomes of a realm when its alpha kneels to a healer's voice." Seraphine tried to speak. Nothing came. Ronan's glass shattered in his hand. Blood ran down his fingers. Lightning answered. The ballroom erupted. Frost shot across the floor. The chandeliers swung violently. Nobles screamed and stumbled back as Ronan's shadow expanded behind him. Not human now, not fully wolf, but something made of storm and grief. His claws lengthened. His eyes burned silver. The air filled with the scent of rain, blood, and ozone. Penniless raised his voice. Chains, for the safety of the realm. Guards rushed forward with silver restraints. For one terrible moment, Ronan looked at them. Seraphine saw the old belief rise in him. Chains are mercy. Love is weakness. Control is safety. Hide the pain. Bury the truth. Become the monster they fear. Because at least monsters do not disappoint anyone by needing. Then his gaze found hers. She could not sing. She could not defend herself. She could only breathe. Seraphine placed her bound hands over her heart and inhaled. 4 counts. Held. Released. Across the ballroom. Through thunder and screaming, Ronan followed. Penniless saw it and shouted, "Seize her!" The guards moved. Ronan's voice split the hall. "Stop." It was not loud. It did not need to be. Every wolf in the room froze. Ronan stepped down from the dais. Lightning crawled over his shoulders. The storm wolf pressed against his skin, vast and terrifying, but he did not let it attack. He walked to the center of the ballroom and removed the silver restraint hidden beneath his sleeve. Then the other. He dropped both at Penniless's feet. The sound rang through the hall like judgment. "I wore these because I believed fear made me safe," Ronan said. Penniless went pale. "Your Majesty, the curse fed on them." The court went silent. Ronan turned, letting every noble, every healer, every commander see the storm under his skin. Not hidden, not denied. For 7 years, I let this court call my pain discipline. I let healers wound me and name it treatment. I let grief become law because I believed the woman I cared for died by my hand. His voice trembled once. The storm trembled with it. "I was afraid," he said. "The first truth." A murmur moved through the room, horrified not by his weakness, but by the fact that he had named it. Ronan continued, each word costing him more than battle ever had. "I was lonely." The second truth. Seraphine felt tears burn behind her eyes. "And I let men who feared love teach me that love would make me monstrous." The storm surged. The glass dome cracked above them. Penniless lunged toward a fallen restraint, shouting for the guards to obey him. "He is compromised. She has bound him." Ronan turned to him, and for the first time that night, the king's rage became perfectly calm. "No," he said. "You did." Mistress Vey stepped from the crowd, shaking but determined, holding Lady Elowen's records and Leora Vale's journal. Behind her came 2 border soldiers Seraphine had healed, then a young royal healer carrying Penniless's storm-root ledger. The truth passed through the court like fire. Elowen poisoned. Treatments falsified. Storm Bride songs erased. Pain used as control. Penniless's face twisted. Without control, kings become beasts. Ronan looked at Seraphine. Then he did what no Alpha King of the North had done before his court in living memory. He knelt, not to surrender the crown, to trust. The ballroom went utterly silent. Seraphine, bound and voiceless, walked to him. The guards did not stop her now. No one did. She placed her marked palm against his chest, where the matching storm mark burned beneath his skin. The lightning surged into her hand. Pain flashed up her arm, bright enough to steal her breath. Ronan tried to pull back, but Seraphine shook her head fiercely. She would not carry the storm for him. That had been the lie. She would stand with him while he faced it. She pressed her other hand over her own heart. "Breathe." Ronan's forehead bowed until it nearly touched her shoulder. Together, they inhaled. The storm rose. Together, they released. The storm broke, not outward in destruction, but upward in light. Blue-white lightning transformed into silver rain that fell inside the ballroom without wetting the floor. The glass dome healed itself with threads of moonlight. Every wolf in the room lowered its head. Not to Seraphine as queen, not to Ronan as tyrant, but to the truth that had finally been spoken. A sound filled the hall. At first, Seraphine thought her voice had returned, but her throat remained silent. The song was coming from the walls, from the old stones, from the hidden bloodlines of healers who had swallowed their songs for generations, from the wolves whose grief had been called weakness, from the storm itself, remembering it had once been rain. Ronan's wolf emerged for one heartbeat, immense and silver-black, crowned in lightning. It looked at Seraphine with Ronan's eyes. Then it bowed its head to her. When the light faded, Ronan was human again. Seraphine's knees buckled. He caught her before she touched the marble. "Seraphine," he said, and the way he spoke her name held every confession he had not yet dared to make. Penniless tried to flee through the side doors, but the royal guard blocked him, not because Ronan ordered them, because they had heard enough. As Penniless was dragged away, he looked back once, hatred burning in his pale eyes. "You will regret teaching a king to need." Ronan held Seraphine closer. "No," he said. "You regret that she taught me need was not weakness." Months later, the North Tower no longer held chains. Ronan ordered the Iron Throne removed from the storm chamber and melted down. From its black metal, the palace smiths made bells. Not war bells, healing bells. They were hung throughout the rebuilt glass garden, and when the spring wind moved through them, the sound was low, warm, and impossible to mistake for thunder. The garden changed first, then the palace, then the kingdom. The royal healing order was dissolved and rebuilt under new law. Silver restraint treatments were forbidden except by the patient's consent and never again used as punishment disguised as medicine. The old Storm Bride records were restored to the archives. The word bride was corrected in every official text. Not possession, not obedience, but witness. One who stands close enough to tell the truth. Seraphine Vale was named first resonant healer of the North before the full court. She wore no crown. She asked for none. She stood in a simple white gown beneath the glass ceiling, her voice still healing from the curse Penniless had placed on it. Some days she could sing only 3 notes before pain returned. Some days she could not sing at all. But when Ronan presented her title, he did not praise her song first. He praised her courage, her patience, her refusal to confuse control with healing, her ability to see pain where others saw danger. The court listened. Some in shame, some in awe, some with tears. For the first time in generations, a quiet kind of strength was given a public name. Ronan changed more slowly. He did not become gentle overnight. He was still a king of winter, still severe in counsel, still capable of silencing a room with one look. But he no longer wore gloves to hide his hands. He no longer left counsel when emotion threatened to enter his voice. When thunder rolled across the mountains, he did not flinch alone in a locked tower. Sometimes he paused, breathed, and let the court wait, while their king remembered he was allowed to be human. And every evening, whether Seraphine sang or not, he came to the glass garden. At first, she told herself it was habit, then recovery, then gratitude. The old wound in her heart was quieter than Ronan's curse had been, but it was there. The fear that she was loved only when useful, needed only when soothing, kept close only because she could make pain easier to bear. One spring morning, she found him standing beneath the glass ceiling as rain moved softly overhead. No storm, no lightning, no chains, just rain. "You slept?" she asked. "All night." The answer should have made her happy. It did, and still something in her chest ached. Ronan turned. He saw it immediately. He had become better at noticing pain others tried to hide. "You think I do not need you now," he said. Seraphine looked away. "The storm is gone." "Yes." "Your breathing is steady." "Yes." "My voice is still unreliable." His face softened, not with pity, but with understanding. "Seraphine." She closed her eyes briefly. "For so long, everyone came to me when they were breaking. Soldiers, children, wolves, you. I knew what I was when someone needed calming. I am less certain what remains when they are healed." Ronan crossed the garden slowly. He stopped before her, leaving space between them until she chose to look up. Then he offered his bare hand. No demand. Always, now, the question. Seraphine placed her hand in his. The storm mark in her palm warmed, gentle as sunlight after rain. "I did not fall in love with your voice because it saved me," Ronan said. "I loved your voice because it was the first place I felt safe. But if you never sang again, I would still know you in silence." Her eyes filled. He stepped closer only when her fingers tightened around his. "I need you less desperately now," he said. "That is true. But I choose you more freely." The rain moved over the glass above them. Seraphine breathed in. For once, not to guide him, not to heal him, simply because she could. A note rose from her throat, fragile and low. It wavered, but did not break. Ronan's eyes closed as if the sound touched a place deeper than magic. Outside the palace, the bells made from his chains began to ring in the spring wind, and far beyond the northern mountains, thunder rolled across the sky, not as a curse returning, not as a monster waking, but as the kingdom's oldest wound finally learning how to become rain.